This is an NBC News Special Report. Here's Tom Yamas.
And good day. We are coming on the air right now with breaking news out of the Middle East. Iranian state TV says they've launched missiles on U.S. bases overseas. We know the president right now is closely monitoring the situation from the White House. He's set to meet with members of his national security team in the Situation Room. And we've already seen reports of explosions near Doha and Qatar. This comes after the U.S., of course, conducted strikes on 3 Iranian nuclear sites over the weekend. I want to get right to NBC's chief foreign correspondent, Richard Engel in Tel Aviv. Richard, this was expected. It was unclear when it was going to happen, but it appears for right now Iran is retaliating.
It was expected, but it was never clear where a strike like this would come. And according to Iranian state media and what witnesses are seeing over Doha, that Iran has fired missiles at the Al-Udeid military base. It's an air base in Kuwait. According to the Iranians, a statement from the military, 6 missiles were launched at Al-Udeid, and witnesses have seen explosions that look like interceptions in the air over Doha. There are also reports of air raid sirens going off in Bahrain and in Kuwait, where there are also U.S. military facilities. The Qatari government, just before this announcement from Iran and just before explosions were seen in the sky, took the extraordinary step of closing their airspaces, and U.S. nationals and British nationals were told to shelter in place. All of that in just the hours right before this apparent Iranian attack.
And then, Richard, we should explain to our viewers, it's unclear what we know at this hour. We are just basically reporting out what we've seen, what we heard, what we believe to be true at this hour right now. The information is still very fluid, but these retaliation strikes have caused injuries before to our American service members. And I'll remind viewers, after the U.S. took out Soleimani, that Iranian commander, Richard, remind our viewers there was that ballistic missile strike on an air base in Iraq that caused so many injuries.
So I was on that base shortly after the strike, and after President Trump, during his first administration, killed a top Iranian commander, Qasem Soleimani, who was one of their most notorious, most skilled operators, who had been held responsible for many attacks against the U.S., many attacks against Israel. He was really at the tip of the spear of Iranian special military operations. After President Trump orders his assassination by a drone strike in Iraq, the Iranians responded. They fired, again, ballistic missiles. They hit the Al-Assad base, which is in Iraq, and there were more than 100 injuries. I arrived on the base shortly afterwards, and there were no one was killed in that attack, and President Trump almost ordered a response at the time, but since no one was killed, he pulled back. But I can tell you it was a very close call. There were quite a few soldiers who had a traumatic brain injury because of the shock wave. The ballistic missile almost hit a mess hall. Several people only survived because of where they happened to have been standing, and had they been a few feet in other places, they could have lost their lives. In this case, what we know is based on what we've seen. We've seen images of explosions in the sky over Doha. The Qataris have closed the airspace, and the Iranians say they fired these 6 ballistic missiles at the Al-Udeid base in Qatar, which is the largest U.S. military installation in the entire Middle East, generally housing about 8,000 troops. It is a massive facility.
We should also mention, just geographically speaking, these countries that have now been targeted, that we believe have been targeted by Iran, are much closer than Israel, so those missiles can get there at a much faster pace. I do want to go to Gabe Gutierrez, who's monitoring everything from the White House. Gabe, the last information we got is that President Trump is monitoring this inside the Situation Room. What else do we know?
Yes, Tom, there's a lot of activity here at the White House. And just a few moments ago, I spoke with a senior White House official who did tell me the president was in the Situation Room, along with the Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, and also Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Dan Kane, along with other officials watching this all unfold. Now, as you were saying, it's still very early in this potential attack, but White House officials are watching this. Now, the president was supposed to have a meeting with his national security staff in the Oval Office, a little unusual. Usually that happens in the White House Situation Room. That was supposed to happen at 1 o'clock. As we understand it, though, the president is still in the Situation Room right now. The senior White House official that I spoke with could not confirm any details of any possible explosions in Qatar. But again, it is still very early. Now, Tom, we should mention that over the last several days and yesterday, the Department of Homeland Security issued a new bulletin, not just concerning Americans abroad, but also Americans here inside the United States, warning of a heightened threat environment. And we also know that according to NBC News reporting, two U.S. officials as well as another person familiar with the matter, that President Trump was warned through an intermediary during his trip to the G7 summit in Canada that if the U.S. were to conduct an airstrike against Iran, that Iran could retaliate by activating sleeper cells within the United States for a potential terrorist attack. Again, that's according to two U.S. officials, that warning coming last week. But as for the latest in this attack, and yes, Tom, I'll send it back to you.
Just stand by for us for a second. We are getting new video in. You can see it on the left hand of your screen there. I'm going to ask the control room to tell me what we're looking at here so our viewers understand what we're looking at. This is Qatar. This is Doha. The skies over Doha earlier tonight. You can see what looks like those flashes in the air. They seem to be coming down. Unclear at this point if those are indeed the missiles being fired from Iran and then the air defense systems intercepting them. We'll know more in the coming minutes. Iran's armed forces has just put out a statement saying they've targeted the Al Udeid air base in Qatar there with a devastating and powerful missile attack. These might be some of those missiles either intercepted in the air or as they're coming down. We're going to learn about that shortly. We're also going to get a check-in with our Courtney Cuby soon, who's getting up live for us at the Pentagon. Gabe, while I have you, remind our viewers, what did President Trump say in the hours and days after that strike on Saturday night on the nuclear sites in Iran? If Iran were to retaliate, what has President Trump promised?
Well, President Trump, along with administration officials, have promised overwhelming force if Iran were to retaliate against the United States. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who also happens to be the interim national security advisor, he warned Iran against this. So did the Vice President J.D. Vance. We'll have to see the extent of this attack, Tom, and whether the U.S. makes the calculation that some sort of escalation is warranted. It is too early to tell, of course. Again, according to a senior White House official, the president monitoring all this from the Situation Room, and this is certainly some of what he will have to weigh. What type of retaliatory response does he escalate this somehow, depending on the extent of the attack and whether there are injuries, potential injuries to American forces or not? But President Trump had warned Iran not to do this. The Iranians obviously feeling that they were forced into some sort of retaliatory response after those U.S. airstrikes. Now, Tom, I should mention, we have not seen the president on camera since late Saturday evening when he announced those U.S. airstrikes. We have heard from him, though, several times as he's posted on social media. Late yesterday, he did float the idea of potential regime change in Iran. Now, administration officials have been very clear that that is not the military posture of the United States. Just this morning, White House Press Secretary Carolyn Leavitt reiterated that, said that the U.S. was not calling for regime change in Iran, but if Iranians were to see what was unfolding and want to overtake their government, that's how regime change would be possible. Still, in the region, it is being seen as very inflammatory language, the president even mentioning the possibility of regime change. The president also saying that there was monumental damage done via those airstrikes in Iran. We're still getting a full assessment of that. But again, we're waiting to hear the latest here from the White House on these latest strikes as the president monitors this
Gabe, stand by for us. I want to go to some new reporting that Keir Simmons, our chief international correspondent, has. He's in Erbil, Iraq tonight, and he has some new reporting on what's happening.